We're back again with Armstrong, the beloved of millions, and also with the German dream, the G-Class. From a distance, it looks like a normal job, but the secret here is that this particular one is flooded. So get ready for a very interesting mechanical repair journey with the 2020 Mercedes G-Class G63. But before we begin, make sure you're subscribed. Let's broadcast the German cube here. An auction yard contacted him and informed them that they have a Mercedes G-Class available that he might be interested in. This time, the auction yard isn't Cooper, but a British company called 3M. He's dealing with them for the first time, and I personally haven't heard of them before. Anyway, he needs a car for a Christmas safari to Switzerland. So the car is a 2020 G-Class G63 with around 800,000 kilometers on it, and the asking price is $97,000. So the price isn't cheap at all, but it's much lower than the price the new and used car market was a bargain. So he bought the car because it might be a good deal. He took on the challenge of fixing a German car in just 1 week. The car had suffered a minor accident that completely destroyed the front end. The oil coolers were compressed from the impact, and there's likely a leak of all the fluids. But the problem is that, for some unknown reason, the engine won't start at all. A number of parts are located in the trunk. The interior is a very nice color, but there are traces of water and mud on the pedals. One of his friends suspects that some parts of the transmission are missing because of where this particular car was parked before being put up for auction. So here we have a car that's both in good and bad condition at the same time. Of course, they won't try to start the engine until they fix the oil lines first. The car was loaded onto a trailer, and he managed to shift the gear to neutral. The car was then moved towards the G-Class garage, the second largest car they work on after the Cullinan. But this time, the new hangar or workshop is much larger than the old cramped garage. They lifted the car for inspection. Underneath, nothing is clear yet, and it's good that there's no oil leak from the transmission area. However, the oil cooler hose is disconnected. He'll start disassembling the plates and surfaces to get a clearer view. The main concern is that the car might have been driven or damaged a lot without oil. He loosens the drain plug nut and hopes the oil will drain, which it does, so there's a perfectly acceptable amount of oil to maintain the transmission. Based on his experience repairing Mercedes cars or similar vehicles with the same engines after accidents, the computer records the accident data and damage. It's crucial to clear the fault codes to restart the engine. This is done using a diagnostic tool. It signals to the computer that everything is fine and ready to start again. He releases the central locking system, and the suspension is fine. There's no problem. At this angle, the oil cooler pipes are visible. He'll disconnect the incoming and outgoing connections and make a temporary connection to transfer the oil without cooling. He lowers the car to the ground and fills it with the required engine and transmission oil. He runs it for a few seconds, literally. He stopped immediately, and the crucial moment arrived when he needed to hear the engine sound to relax. Unfortunately, with every press of the start button, nothing happened. There was no airbag deployment, so the safety fuse was likely not blown and was cutting off power to the starter. However, for some reason, there was no power reaching even the interior under the front seats. He found the pyro fuse, and if you remember, he had a history with that safety fuse, but after checking it with a multimeter, he found it was receiving 12 volts correctly, so that was fine. He connected the OBD to check again. After a while, a series of codes appeared. None of them related to the airbags, so there was no data on an accident preventing the engine from starting, but he still didn't know what the cause could be. He thought that connecting the front collision sensor might help, so he connected it to the front and tried starting again, but the engine was still not working. He checked the front fuse box while the device was running, but there were no codes. The problem might be a fault in the response, the brake pedal, and indeed, when pressed, no lights appeared. This is a feature common in many German cars where you have to press the brake pedal before starting, so he removed the area around the pedals and considered making an electrical connection to bypass the brake pedal switch. The rear lights did indeed illuminate, but when he tried pressing the starter motor, nothing changed, so the problem might be with the brake pedal itself or a problem with the braking system. At that moment, the suspicion returned to the transmission. The diagnostic tool displayed a code for the starter motor. The starter motor had a fault. If you recall, with the Rolls-Royce version, this required completely disassembling the engine. He tried connecting electricity directly to the starter from underneath in a very tight space, but the starter still wouldn't turn, so his father suggested that they should check the engine's integrity. He tried turning the engine pulley from the front, and it's essential that the crankshaft and belts rotate smoothly to indicate that the engine itself is sound. The engine was broken inside. The key was in its correct position, but turning it was extremely difficult. The crankshaft was literally frozen solid, so there was a problem or suspicion of several important systems. The situation was strange because the car wasn't making any strong noises at all, so the next step was to remove the engine from its place for further inspection. They had to get this beast, the V8, out to see exactly what the problem was. The car's design here is different, so the engine won't be lowered or dropped from underneath, but will be raised upwards, which is a bit more difficult. 3 members of the entire team worked silently to dismantle all the power supply components. First, they lowered the transmission housing, which could also throw them into a vortex if there was a problem. Then they disconnected all the electrical connections and wires. The engine will be accessed from specific locations with chains and pulled upwards from the hood. It's a giant and complex engine due to many systems it contains. They'll dismantle every part of the system to reach the spark plugs. The car hasn't been driven much, so it's not expected that they'll be finished at all. They continued dismantling. He checked the coils and found one with a lot of oil on it. He inserted the camera to inspect the cylinders but found nothing concerning on the piston surfaces inside the 8 cylinders. They were all fine. Then he tried manually winding the engine again, but surprisingly it was extremely difficult. He had completely locked the engine, even if the timing belts were disconnected. There might be slight rotation or any movement or anything that suggested the engine was working properly. At this point, he lost his enthusiasm for the engine itself, and also for the transmission system, which we still don't know what it hides. The transmission system, which is the most expensive part of the car, is completely faulty. And so, the first day of the challenge passed, and we can say that Armstrong was stuck in this project. The engine here is the same as the Aston Martin DBX version that he repaired before, taking its engine apart, and we saw it in detail here on the channel. It's true that he dealt with a similar system, but every repair process is different, and he might come up with completely new scenarios. At that moment, he decided to buy one from eBay, because he was supposed to finish this car in 6 days. He actually bought the new engine and managed to convince the seller to buy it with its transmission at a good price. So they had a complete system with everything. Without wasting time, he drops the entire system back into place inside the engine compartment, secures it, and then checks what needs fixing. He disconnects the oil cooler he installed initially and buys new, genuine Mercedes-Benz connectors. He installs the turbocharger pressure sensors in their designated locations and reconnects all the electrical components correctly. He removes the air intake, replaces the air intake with a new one, and reinstalls it. The same process is repeated for the other side of the engine. He then connects the exhaust pipes to the turbochargers, installs the ECU, since it's located near the turbocharger, connects its supply hoses, installs the bumper, and places thermal insulation over the turbochargers. He raises the car and reconnects the drive shaft to the differential. He also buys a new transmission oil cooler, installs it, and connects all its wiring. Finally, he closes the transmission's frame or barrier. Next, he drains the engine oil, which was a crucial step. He removes the oil filter along with it and installs the new one. He tightens the oil plug and lowers the car again. He buys a new front radiator to replace the faulty one, but discovers while installing it that the mounting points aren't correct. So he removes the fender and tries to straighten it with a hydraulic clamp. He secures the radiator in place and then reconnects all the oil lines. The last step is to reinstall all the production air vents and ventilation parts as they were. He starts filling the engine with oil, and when he finishes, he connects the battery wires and a charger to ensure it's at the required voltage. Now, the real test for him is starting the engine. He presses the start button, but there's no movement or sound, the same problem as before. He runs a diagnostic tool to clear all the issues, but then it shows a problem with communication with the engine itself. He tries searching further, for this problem was discovered to be caused by a lack of communication between the control unit and the transmission's ECU, and the car's main ECU. Since there was a problem and he couldn't shift the car into gear, he decided to remove the old unit from the second transmission. He raised the car and started by removing the components from the new one. First, he removed the oil card and removed it. Then he completely removed the transmission's electrical or mechatronic unit. He removed this unit from from the old transmission, took it to the car, and reinstalled it. He shut everything down again and reconnected the control cable. He got back in the car and tried again, but the same problem persisted. Desperately, he went back to clear all the fault codes, but unfortunately the communication problem with the engine remained. Farmstrong is now trying to figure out what could be causing this problem. He's looking for any disconnected components and checking everything, and in one of them it really wasn't installed correctly. He gets into the car, presses the start button, and suddenly, without any warning, the engine starts. Imagine that. After all that trouble, just a wire was causing all this problem. He was even surprised by it. So they're working correctly, because this problem wasn't present on the old engine. Replacing the old engine wasn't a mistake at all. All they've lost now is time. From here, I can tell you that everything that follows will be easier. The side shelf arrives from the paint shop in the same color as the car. He installs it in its place, and the part that was previously straightened still needs some work. He uses a